Welcome to the Reticle Up podcast, where I, 3-Gun Kenzie, will be interviewing competitive shooters, hunters, fishermen, archers, entrepreneurs, and outdoorsmen. Come learn with me as I interview people from all walks of life, in different disciplines, all across the world, from novices to professionals of all ages. No matter what, everyone has something they can teach you, so come join me on the journey. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Reticle Up podcast. You may know my host here since we have so few podcasts in this industry, but I've got Billy Barton on today. So he also has podcasts called Speed Up and Get Your Hits. And he's a GM in Carry Optics, which we're going to talk a little bit about today, and a little bit about what he's planning on doing after Carry Optics Nationals. So Billy, how are you?
I am awesome. I hope you are as well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I like that little dark side laugh because I know where you're going.
Yes.
There's going to be some people that are going to be like excited, and there's going to be others that'll make fun of you. It'll be great.
Of course. Yeah. No, that's part of it for sure.
Yeah, we've got to leave that for later. So for you, like, why did you start shooting USPSA in the first place? And like, did you just go straight for Carry Optics?
Yes. Yeah. So it's been pretty cool to see. I've only been in the sport for I guess maybe less than 3 years now. But it's been interesting. I think Carry Optics really has changed the sport a lot. And one of the reasons is being that it brought in folks like me. If Carry Optics had never existed, I would have never shot USPSA, like straight up.
Really?
And the reason for that's pretty simple, right? So I mean, my match gun, I mean, is the gun that I have in my pants right now, right? I mean, it's what I carry, right? And so that's, what I came into USPSA with. It was my carry gun. And, honestly, if I wouldn't spend as much time working on USPSA if it didn't apply to everything else that I do with, yes, the classes that I teach and so forth, but also just like what I carry every day. Right. And so that's really my motivation for being good with guns to begin with is kind of the other side of the house, if you will. So, yep, straight into Carry Optics and never really looked back.
Okay. Now, how did you find USPSA in general though? Like, were you Googling competitions? Someone recommended it?
Hard to say exactly how I found out about the sport. Obviously, I've known about competition shooting for a long time. Shot a little bit of IDPA way back in the day.
Okay.
But I guess what got me back into it, essentially, I ran out of folks that were better than me to shoot with, right? And to me, when you're looking to get better, that's pretty important. Not only to watch folks and learn from those kind of folks, right, but also just to keep in mind what's possible. When you're the guy that trains more and practices more than most of your friends, you can get to a point really easily where you start thinking you're about as good as you can possibly get, right? And as soon as you think that,
the local only shooters.
As soon as that too, right? But as soon as you think that you are correct, right, and it becomes really difficult to actually grow in a way that you might. And so that was really what got me into the sport. But I've loved it ever since. I'm a very competitive person, and essentially the pursuit of excellence is what brought me to it, right? And so that's
Okay. Now, when you got started too, though, USPSA and even IDPA, they've changed the rules where now you can have that concealed carry holster. So, like for you, you had to get a different setup, though, right? For outside the waistband.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I've always dabbled in both, right? The kind of concealed carry as well as outside the waistband setups. So I was definitely that the classic tactical Timmy guy that started with the multicam blue alpha belt and the whole deal, right? It's nothing wrong with it. It's just looks funny to folks that aren't used to it, right? I mean, it really doesn't hold you back. It's the same thing, just different color for the most part. But yeah, so it was not a stranger to outside the waistband at all. I actually started before appendix carry was legal, so I had to go outside the waistband. Right. So yeah, I think for me, when you're first starting off with pistol shooting, obviously the ability to get your gun out and establish the right grip every time, and the draw part of it is super important. But eventually, you get to the point where it's like, man, what bucket the gun comes out of is like not super important. It's kind of the noisy part afterwards that I care a lot more about, right? And so to me, it doesn't make a big difference whether it's outside the waistband, inside the waistband. The draw process itself is pretty similar. I care more about the noisy part. So
yeah. Now,
yeah.
but okay,
Okay.
caveat to that, with that, you've got the speed that you're trying to push in USPSA to be better, to be good, to win.
Sure.
So those people are doing scoop draws and they're trying to do everything to have that advantage. Whereas in concealed carry, retention's more important and all of that. And your draw is probably not a scoop draw. So like, what do you do to balance all of that?
So I honestly think that the potentially, right? I mean, you can write a scenario. When you start talking about tactical scenarios, you can write it however you want to make whatever you want important. I think potentially speed on your draw is even more important for a defensive scenario than in a competition. In a competition, what do you think? If you think about, your average A-class shooter versus your average GM, right? Like, what is the draw time difference to first shot between those guys? Maybe a tenth or two, and sometimes it's actually going to be negative, right? Like, my draw is faster than Christian Seiler's, JJ Orcaz's, right? Like, and it was when I was A-class, right? Because they don't really care about that stuff, right? They're
again, draw for GMs over second draw, I think, for most others.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair comparison. My point being, right, if you're shaving a tenth or two off your draw, like the chance on that making a meaningful impact on your placement in a competition is pretty minimal. In a defensive scenario, the bad guy always gets to go first, and so unless you have a way to overcome that, you're probably out of luck. So. For me, my draw process is actually very, very similar for outside the waistband versus inside the waistband, with the simple difference being you have to clear that cover garment. What I learned in the pursuit of a really fast concealed carry draw actually is what enabled me to figure out the way that I draw in competition to this day, which is kind of my scoop pluck hybrid thing that I do, right? But I figured that out from concealed carry. So yeah, for me, the draw process is really similar.
Okay. Now, have you actually shot with your carry rig set up?
I have. Yeah.
Yay.
I have shot several of my local matches from Appendix. It's a lot of fun. Yep.
Reloading from spare mag pouches, all of that stuff under the garment, or what?
So that's where the big difference comes in, right? For a lot of folks, thankfully, shooting in high cap. Most stages are set up to where there is a spot to reload somewhere on the stage that's not going to massively, mess you up. And you generally only have to reload once. So if you're shooting a high cap division, it's not the end of the world to reload from concealment. But I probably wouldn't be shooting production from concealment, to be totally honest. That sounds like a nightmare.
And IDPA, when they had the 10 rounds instead of 15, I mean, you were having to have 2-3 magazines sometimes. I mean, even though their round is 18, I think.
Well, that's the funny thing about IDPA, though, right? Like, no one is actually competing in IDPA with a practical carry rig. I literally haven't seen it. So, when I compete from concealment in USPSA, I actually compete with what I carry every single day, which is really cool. I never did that in IDPA. Like, none of my gear was legal in IDPA, and I had to go buy different concealment gear to compete in IDPA, which is backwards from
counterintuitive of
what it's supposed to be. Yeah, 100%.
Right.
100%.
Defense and Pistol Association can't do anything that you would actually do in real life. But we're going to have that as our tagline.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Funny how things change over time.
For sure. Now, okay, there's the argument of keep your gun stock, right?
Yep.
But for you and I think you and I have a similar carry rig with kind of modified triggers, sights, all sorts of good stuff.
I compete with 100% stock gun.
No way.
Yeah. And now it's an OZ9, right? So the cool thing with that is it comes, I shoot for Zev, full disclosure. It comes out of the box pretty much the way that I want it, right? So it is
competitive-ish. I mean, that's not like a stock gun that most people are going to go buy.
Yeah, no, 100%, right? So, but yeah, no, I totally get where you're going with the question. Yeah. Lots of reasons folks have for keeping your gun stock, right? I definitely think there's a misnomer that people talk about unreliable parts as if, oh, well, that's for competition only. Like, you shouldn't put that in anything you would carry. And I'm like, it's kind of important for our guns to work also. Like, if our guns don't work, that's kind of a big disadvantage.
Me, how I know.
Yeah. So, I think obviously we should be careful with modifications that we're doing. There's as an example, people see aftermarket triggers that reduce reliability in guns and be like, oh, well, therefore you shouldn't mess with your triggers. I'm like, no, you shouldn't mess with your striker spring. Like if you're, right, like you should leave that stock. Yes, lightening your striker spring can massively, impact the reliability of your pistol for sure. But putting, as an example for Glock shooters, a factory Glock minus connector in your gun, like, no, that is not going to impact the functionality and reliability of your gun in any way at all, right?
Still guide rod, like those are good ideas.
Yeah, 100%, right? So there's thoughtful modifications you can make that are absolutely going to improve the performance of your gun without having any negative, impacts on reliability in my mind. So yeah.
Okay, what is your fancy setup here? I got to see the holster, flashlight. Yeah.
For competition or
I just want to know like what you carry, what you shoot, because
the gun's the same, right? So I already mentioned I shoot for Zev. So this is the KC Eusebio edition OZ9 that I'm running. It's essentially a 5-inch gun. If you're not familiar with it, the OZ9, the upper of it is Glock compatible. So this is obviously all Zev parts, but I could take a Glock 34 slide essentially and put it on here and it would work. But it also is kind of like the, P320 concept. It has a full steel chassis in it, which is going to increase rate, gives me a full steel rail in the front, changes up the whole balance of it, more than doubles the slide to rail contact surface area, and gives me interchangeable grip modules. Nice. So there's a lot of cool stuff about it. I dig the guns quite a bit. That's what I carry.
What light do you have on it?
Compete with. Right now I have just a normal 1000 lumen X300.
Nice.
I am anxiously awaiting the turbos to come out or be available. They seem pretty cool. But
awesome.
Also keeping. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, I was gonna say choice of holster. Like, what are you drawing out of?
So for concealment, I'm actually just running. This is a filter floodlight with discrete carry concepts clips to run on all my holsters. There's a lot of good holsters out there. The cool thing about this one, as well as like the Tier 1 concealed MSP holster and a couple others that have come out now, is that the retention is all based upon the light. So I can take any one of my pistols with this light on here, throw it in here, and the retention works really, really well. And it also just has all the features that I look for in a concealment holster, with the way that it's built, with the way the wings set up, and the changeability of the ride heights and retention and all that kind of stuff. Works really well. I dig that holster quite a bit. And then I am actually running a Tier 1 concealed holster for my normal competition rig. This is the new Optio V2. This is actually one of the early prototypes before the real holster came out.
Okay.
I had a little bit of input into kind of some of the concepts behind what this holster was built in. This holster was essentially modified from their V1 Optio holster specifically to allow you to draw the way that I do, essentially. And so that's nothing too crazy about it. It looks a lot like a lot of holsters you would see in the competition space, but it's very different from what you would normally see in the tactical space. And so it's a great holster. I dig it a lot.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I like the filter stuff. I have their Enigma as well. That whole system is really incredible for hiking, for women.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my dumb self, by the way, I tried to get the original like snap loops off, and I was doing it the wrong way.
Yep.
It took me like a good 10 minutes to realize how easy it was if you did it the correct way. So good job on retention.
Yeah. There's I'm not a big loop guy, but their loops are no joke. They do not come undone accidentally, for sure.
I trapped myself until I figured.
Totally understand. Yeah.
Embarrassing. So what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, the dot stuff. I mean,
yeah.
I'm having to move to a dot, which I'm excited about. Trying a little bit of carry optics, but definitely going to open.
Okay.
I mean, how does someone even master the dot? Picking it up, choosing the right one. I mean, I'm still doing the head bobble thing, like chasing the optic rather than setting my eyes to it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me more. How do I fix myself?
The dot, right? The dot.
Yeah.
There's obviously, we could go on for days about the dot, but I guess a couple entry level kind of ideas for it, right? Especially in the issue you're talking about is what a lot of folks struggle with first coming in the dot, which is like, where is it? How do I find it? I think the thing to understand about that is that is not something the dot is doing to you. It's just exposing a problem you've had all along and just never knew because Iron sights allow you to steer the gun into the target, with your eyes. And if you have a sloppy presentation and it's way off target, you can see exactly where it is and just fix it, right? The dot doesn't really let you do that so much.
I've had a problem, by the way, when I have mics on targets. I'm like, haha.
I don't mean you specifically. I mean just people in general. Yeah. So essentially, the way we solve that, at its core is making sure that our presentation is kind of naturally indexed on the target, and then it's consistent every single time. So, figuring out in the draw stroke how make sure my hands are on the gun the exact same way every single time, and then building that natural index. One of the drills that I like to do, and I still do, like when I switch guns, right? Like if I switch from a Glock to an MP and the grip angle is a little bit different. And kind of train an actual index, right? So in dry fire, you can just kind of pick, whatever your target is, but a nice, small, precise target, right? Close your eyes, draw the gun out and present it, and then open your eyes and see, okay, is the dot right in the middle of my glass? And is it right where I was looking? And if it's not, where is it, right? And don't change anything. See, okay, first of all, is there a trend? In other words, okay, I'm presenting this gun naturally. I'm presenting the gun low every single time. So I need to figure out, do I need to change something in my grip? Or do I just need to feel that adjustment to where I bring the gun up to where I'm actually seeing the dot? Is there a change I need to make there to where my grip, my presentation is on point? If there's not a trend and it's just all over the place, okay, now we just have a consistency issue, right? Either way, we've diagnosed what the issue is, and we just need to kind of get to the point where we can just kind of bring the gun up, open our eyes, and the dot's there. Once you can do that, then defining the dot thing is not going to be an issue anymore. It's just gonna be very natural to bring the gun up. Dot's always going to be there. And that is once you get to that point, the dot is the cheat code for sure. You'll never want to go back.
I think it's a mix. I really like irons, but then
I
know a lot of people. Okay, you're saying like that's fixing your kind of sight presentation, and I think that would improve you with irons. Then do you think it is easier to go back to iron sights after
100%. I think it helps you with a number of things, right? So obviously for a lot of folks, when they switch to the dot, they have to improve their draw stroke, their grip, and their presentation. And the dot really helps them do that, right? And so that can only make you better with irons if instead of having to steer the gun in and fix your presentation when you draw, the irons are there every time as well, and you're ready to press the trigger as soon as your sights pop up into your vision. That can only obviously help you with that. The other thing it does, the folks at the top of the iron sight game are more and more moving to all target focus at all distances, right?
Yeah.
And the only way you can do that is if your index is really squared away to begin with, right? If you can't trust that your sights are going to be aligned, well then yes, you have to pull your vision back and look at your sights and see, are they aligned? Okay, where's the target? Where's my sights? Where's my target? Right? That whole kind of thing. And so learning that natural index and learning how to lock everything in and get super consistent with your sight alignment from the dot absolutely applies over to your iron sight game and helps you shoot better with target focus, I think, as well. And I think there's a lot the dot is a super helpful training tool, I think, for shooting in general. Things like, am I moving the gun when I press the trigger, right?
That's huge. Dry fire, yeah. So like I was teaching my friend this past weekend, every time she pulled the trigger, felt the wall, whatever, and as soon as you break, hey, where'd the dot go? That's what you're doing wrong. Oh, I saw the dot go down. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in theory, that your iron sights are telling you the exact same thing that your dot is, but it's harder to see, right? And a lot of folks, I find it more difficult to read what their iron sights are telling them nearly as well as you can with your dot. Whereas, like you said, you can hand a dot to a brand new shooter and they can immediately see that dot go over low left when they pull the trigger, right? And so, it can be a great training tool for various things like that, I think, and help you learn things about shooting that absolutely apply over to iron sights as well. So,
yeah. Oh, man. So, my least favorite target, I think, on the whole entire grid is mini poppers. Yeah, mini poppers are not my friend. Doesn't matter if it's irons, dot, PCC. I don't know why. I don't want to respect that little guy either. Especially transitioning over like to paper to steel. I'm like, oh, I could just hit that anywhere. Is there a spot? I mean, are you focusing just on the calibration zone when you see that and really trying to feel that trigger when you?
100%, right? So, the deal with, USPSA, right? If you see your dot lift from exactly on the edge of the A zone and that dot's sitting on the A zone, C zone perf, right? And you pull that trigger and you're like, man, I don't know if that was an Alpha or Charlie. You're totally happy with that, right? Like that is not something you would go back and make up or fix.
Yeah.
And so the idea is, although you want to hit the A zone, if you miss the A zone by a little, well, you get a Charlie. That doesn't make me too sad on the inside. I'm still okay with that, right? With a steel, if you miss the edge of the steel by just a little bit, and it was still a good shot, but you missed by just a little bit, like you get absolutely nothing, right? Complete fail. And so we can't shoot for a piece of steel the same way that we shoot for an A zone. The dot can't be anywhere on there. And so that's just the visual discipline thing, I think, of making sure we aren't shooting for the steel. We're shooting for a spot in the center of the steel, right? And we're making sure that the dot actually stops in the center before we allow the gun to kind of go off. But that's it's definitely a difficult mental challenge for a lot of folks on the steel, for sure.
Oh yeah. Even going to war with a rifle is embarrassing.
Yeah.
But that's why we have 57 rounds in our tubes now.
Yeah, fair enough. Accuracy by volume. I dig it. I dig it.
So I am reworking a pistol, obviously, because I've got working with mass piece arms, want to shoot open, all that good stuff. So my targets, like you said, with just working the simple stuff, I've got scaled down versions from like Ben Steger's pro shop. Then I've got the Go Fast Don't Suck like swingers and the tuxes and all that. Can you talk about like your dry fire and like what you're really drilling or working on when you have those target sizes and those different like no shoots, tuxedos, all that stuff that you see in competition?
Yeah, all the things. So I'm not one of these guys that I was like, hey, here's my 10 dry fire drills that I do every single session, right? My dry fire varies immensely. There's times when I'm, inside with a target and I'm working on a target for a long time. There's times I'm out running around my backyard with an airsoft gun, right? Like it varies quite a bit. And so I think having a plan, having an idea what you need to work on, and just figuring out ways to do that in dry fire are super important. I think that you brought up the little targets. I think that there's different benefits to a lot of different target sizes. Definitely, small little targets and practicing, visual discipline for difficult targets, super important, especially if that's something that you need to work on.
Little mini poppers that are mini poppers on my wall.
Yeah, right. So I also think, having big full-size targets up close in your dry fire is super important as well, because that's an entirely different visual challenge. On the, you've probably heard it said before, like how do you make a GM miss a target? And you put an open target at 3 yards, right?
Yep.
And so that is an equally challenging visual process is like, hey, I absolutely have the speed to shoot this target really fast, but the challenge there is snapping your eyes to the center of this massive field of brown and actually picking a spot in the center of the target and seeing it with your eyes, not having that kind of eyes bouncing on the target, but just being able to snap right to the center and see where your gun goes. Yeah. So that's equally important to work in dry fire, I think. So I work with a wide variety of different sizes and distances and all that kind of stuff. I think if you can figure out a way to do different distances in dry fire as well, not just different sizes, that's important as well, because being able to actually snap the focus of your eyes to different distances back and forth is just as important as treating the different sizes and difficulties appropriately. So
I've been working on just draw right now, basically, but like wide open, just because that's where I have to start.
100%, right? It makes complete sense.
Then I'm getting better at swingers. So like you said, I mean, I'm not a GM, nowhere near, but like South Carolina was one of them. Clean on every single swinger, and then the wide open paper right there. 2 yards, not even when I loaded the PC, miss, right? So that was really painful. But for swingers, like I have been picking that spot on the back of the berm, right, if it's there, or tracking, or what is it called, ambushing, or whatever. Like, what are the different techniques in working on swingers, and like how do you practice those?
So it's obviously difficult for a lot of folks. There's you kind of mentioned the two techniques, right there, depending on how they're presenting, whether there's a pause you can take advantage of, or whether you have to track them and so forth. How you're going to approach them is going to be a little bit different. But a lot of folks, unfortunately, swingers are not cheap. And so a lot of folks, don't have one that they can use in their personal practice. You already mentioned the Go Fast Don't Suck swingers. Those are pretty cool. There's another tool called Dry Fire Ninja, which is pretty cool. It's an online application that you can just get through your browser. There's a free version of it. What essentially that you do is like dry fire on your TV, right? And so you can actually basically build stages, move targets and barrels around your screen, put them at different distances, And you can use swingers, right? And you can put barrels in front of swingers and different orientations, all that kind of stuff.
Is this a paid thing?
There's a paid version of it, right?
Okay.
You can get access to like pre-built classifier stages, and there's a lot of cool stuff in there. But there's a free version. You can just access the swingers and stuff for free. And so yeah, you can dry fire moving targets like on your TV and stuff, or your computer monitor, or whatever you have. Obviously, bigger screens are easier, but yeah, that's pretty cool.
I was thinking about that. Just make sure that your gun is unloaded and store your magazines before you start dry firing at your TV or your laptop. Just like you would anywhere else, but especially at those devices.
For sure, right? But you can start. If you're just starting the journey on the swinger, you can even just start with the idea of this time I picked up from JJ, right? He has a drill in one of his classes where he'll take a standard USPSA target, but he'll draw a 4-inch circle or whatever, kind of low right, low left, and up at the top. And you imagine a swinger kind of arcing through those 3 circles, and you're like, man, okay, inside that circle is where I want to hit it. But what you're really working at is like never stopping moving the gun, right? Like you would be tracking a swinger, but hey, I want to land that shot inside that 4-inch circle every time, right? So that kind of basic mechanics of it is a great place to start. Okay. But yeah, eventually figuring out some way you can actually have a moving target and track it and learning, because really learning how to call your shots, I think, is the most important part of shooting swingers. Like having an idea of, did I hit that or did I not? Is pretty important, right? Yeah. And that just takes practice on it. So.
Yeah. And these days, I remember back in the day, I would just activate it and worry about it later. Now, I physically cannot do that, which is I have to, if it's there, right? It's all right, I'm going to activate it and I'm going to hit it in this turn, or maybe it's 2 shots, one at a time. But yeah, so I'm not one of those people that it'll just be there, because it's never not. It's never, you're just stuck there waiting.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big difference between.
They can be a huge time suck for sure if you mismanage them. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So for you going in, I know 2022 is almost over, but you're going into nationals.
Yep.
What's going to be your goal at nationals in your division overall? You are GM, so where are you gonna land? Yeah.
Goal setting in our sport, I think, is enormously challenging, because so much of it is not up to you. It's up to everyone else. Right. And so essentially, I have an idea of how I want to shoot. And the scores will tell me that, right? So in other words, if I just be really simple, don't shoot like a GM, and I'm down in the middle pack of the master class dudes, I'm obviously not going to be happy with that, right? Yeah. It is not my intention to win nationals. I do not have enough ammo and practice time to be as good as the top guys right now, but I definitely have an idea of how I want to shoot. I don't think it's really possible to say I want to be in this place or not. I like to be super realistic with my goals, and that's not up to me a lot of times. It's up to the other guys and how they shoot as well. So I haven't even done a solid look at who all is signed up. I know there's a lot of heat in carry optics right now, right? So there's probably, I would say, a good 5, maybe 4 or 5 guys that have a solid shot at winning it. And then there's, probably a good 10 or 15 GMs that are all going to essentially be fighting for the field right under those guys. So it's going to be an interesting event for sure. I'm excited about it. It should be fun.
That's awesome. Okay. Now we talked about this kind of offline. What's happening after nationals for you? What are you going to try?
Yeah, so we talked about it a little bit before this, right? So we just signed up with Inkstad Arms. They built me a rifle. So I'm going to be shooting some PCC, going after that, trying to make GM in that this year. But it should be fun. I've been shooting carbine for a long time. You can probably see a couple of them up on the wall behind me that are nothing like USPSA PCCs, right? I really wish there was a good practical rifle competition scene. But there really just isn't outside of 3-gun. And so PCC is where it's at. If you want to actually demonstrate super high competency, with in practical rifle, that's pretty much where you're going right now. So, I'm excited about it. It should be an interesting journey for sure. So that's what I'll be getting into after Nats this year.
Okay. Have you looked into PCSL League, Max Lee Granis's 2-gun series?
I have, absolutely. Yeah. I think Max is doing a lot of really cool stuff right now. He's thinking outside the box, doing stuff on his own. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I would
You'd have
definitely
to
be interested in
travel.
at some point.
Yeah, you'd have to travel, but I think that would be worth it. Like, because I've seen your two gun. I know we'll talk about your like classes and stuff. Like you said, there is super high value in rifle training, especially for like tactical people or people on squads or military, whatever it looks like. But just in general, like truck gun, like you said, the special ones in that background there.
Yeah.
You know, what are your goals looking at PCC? Like, what do you know that is going to be different from pistol versus what do you know that are going to like correlate to each other?
Super interesting game, right? So, and I'm not one of these guys that's like, hey, we need to make sure PCC is like always, testing actually a good test of carbine skills. That's not really realistic in USPSA. In USPSA, we are shooting a pistol gun with a rifle, and so it is what it is. In pistol, I kind of have 3 different ways that I essentially pull the trigger, depending on target difficulty and distance. In USPSA for a rifle, I have 1 way I pull the trigger. Right, all of the targets are essentially the same difficulty, or really really close with a rifle. Right, I mean, I can shoot, and I just posted a video about this. I can shoot 10 splits, 25 yards, and get alphas. Right, so it's a very different game in that it's simpler in the idea that you don't have as much modulation really of difficulty in how you approach the targets. But it's also a little bit less forgiving in that way because, although I can do that standing still static at 25 yards, like if we're doing it on the move, we're doing it coming into position, we have awkward leans and so on and so forth. There's definitely unique challenges to trying to push the speed that much across all the targets. But yeah, it's a little bit of a different game. Splits matter way more in PCC. Like it's just the field's closer, right? Because of the reduced challenge as far as target difficulty. So everything's got to be fast, and you gotta get all the points too. So it's a fun game for sure. I'm looking forward to diving into it.
Okay. Would you put like two gun nationals with USPSA on your schedule next year then?
Maybe we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll see.
I mean, I do like the multi-gun aspect. I think with USPSA, I would love to see an actual rifle and 2-gun, not just PCC. Like I miss my rifles. I would like to use said rifles, but yeah. And then you're gonna have those fun clay targets. You're gonna have to really learn your like holdovers ish. Have you seen those videos from last year?
Oh yeah.
From this year? Oh god.
Oh yeah.
Those are unforgiving.
Yes, they are. Yeah, so I couldn't help myself. I intended to really stick with carry optics through nationals, but I got the new gun. I had to go shoot. I had to go shoot at least one match. Shot really well. The only really thing that hit me, I think I had a couple of mics, but they were all from height over bore stuff. You get so used to just snapping your eyes to exactly where it is that you want to hit the target in USPSA. And when I'm doing my normal, carbine stuff in classes and so forth, like it's a different mindset. But on the USPSA field, like I switch back into the carry optics mode and just have a very particular way that I do things, right? And so it's an interesting switch going back and forth and having to keep that in mind. But other than that, it should be pretty square away.
Yeah. So are you a pro offset or no offset? One optic only. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, so I actually have offsets on pretty much all of my guns except for the PCC. Although I just have a handy mount sitting right here that's awaiting a new optic. I was just talking to my guys over at Holosun today, so I should be getting the new 509 here before too long to slap on the PCC. So we'll definitely have one. Yeah, for those hard left leans, it's definitely a thing. For sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Or like me when I lose an optic every other match.
There is that. There is that.
I can't make this up. I can't. I'm glad you brought up Holosun though. I don't represent them, but I am a Holosun fanatic. So 510C, 407K, 507C. I have it on carry guns, on PCs, every gun. Love them.
Yeah.
So like, what's the benefit on using Holosun in your mind? Like, what do you like about those optics? Because I love them. I'm obsessed.
Holosun's done a lot of really cool stuff. I don't represent them either. They give me industry pricing on stuff, but that's about the extent of my relationship with them. But they've done a lot of really cool things. And even if you're not a huge fan of their optics, you have to be a huge fan of what they've done for the industry because they brought in that competition. And there's a lot of companies that have done that. It's kind of like before, if you look at the the pricing of Trijicon LPVOs, before and after Vortex came out with the Razor, like you'll see a huge dive off, right? And it's like, of course, competition is going to have a positive impact for the consumer. And so Hollison's done a great job of bringing out quality optics at significantly more affordable prices than we were seeing before from anything decent. And so that's pretty cool. But they have some really good products. Really the only optic from them that I use regularly is the 509T for my offsets on rifles. I run the SRO on all my pistols, but I like something a little bit extra rugged on the rifles when you're tossing in barrels and doing all kind of crazy stuff. So the 509T is just an absolute tank. And so I enjoy that quite a bit on my rifles.
That's awesome. Very cool. Yeah. Awesome. So, okay, switching gears. So you got a SpecTrain company. When did you even start that and why?
So I didn't even start it.
What?
So, yeah, funny story, right? So I started teaching, years and years ago in kind of a casual and maybe somewhat like kind of like you're doing now, friends, people that I knew that, entry level concealed carry classes, that kind of stuff. And this was back when I lived up in Virginia. When I moved down to North Carolina, I said, all right, I got to figure out the landscape down here. What's up? So I basically signed up to take, everybody's classes that I knew about that was in my area. And I was like, I'm just going to kind of scope everybody out, see what's up.
Who'd you take classes from? Now I got to know.
A handful of folks. A handful of folks.
Okay. All right. There we
go. Nobody that I particularly recommend at this point. But yeah, so I came across SpecTrain. And it was this super unusual company, super unique. They were running classes like I still to this day have never seen anywhere else in the country. I showed up and I think we had about 14 folks as far as the group of students, and we had 5 instructors there. And so essentially the entire class, and this is still most of the way that we run our classes, was one-on-one with an instructor. So, we had, 2.5 relays, if you will, which is very, which is very typical. I think even for large line classes, if you've got 20 students, you'll run 2 relays of 10 or whatever. But when you run 2 relays and you have 5 instructors, that means that there's an instructor literally watching you for every single shot that you fire throughout the day. And I was like, this is pretty freaking cool. And so I jumped in with those guys, reached out to Chris, who's a good buddy of mine now, who actually started the company, was running it back then. And I ended up essentially helping him run the company very, very quickly thereafter, developed some new classes. Started teaching more performance and competition style stuff for them, and basically helped run the company for a couple of years. And then he accepted a job with Vortex Edge up in Wisconsin, so he's up there teaching full time for them now. And now I run SpecTrain, so kind of carrying the torch there with that company and keeping the show running while he's up in Wisconsin. So yeah, that's kind of the SpecTrain story.
That's awesome. For USPSA, then, like when you were getting started in carry optics, where did you start with classification level? Because obviously, like you started doing the performance pistol and all that with like your GM status and everything else.
Yeah.
Where did you start?
I would have to go back and do the math, right? So I'm not actually sure where I first landed. I know I had some train wrecks, obviously, like everyone else does, pretty early. But I definitely came into the sport with a pretty solid pre-established skill set. So it wasn't like starting from the ground up. So I shot 2 matches, I think, in like 2018. Figured out that the gun I had at the time wasn't even legal for the sport, and so I took a little bit of time off. Came back with the once I signed with Zev with the OZ9 and all the right gear and so forth in July of 2019, and I made master in actually just under 6 months. So from there, so it was a pretty quick journey through there. That actually happened in January of 2020. So right after that was when all the matches got locked down. There was kind of COVID hits that kind of tapped the brakes on the record time I was trying to make to GM. But
I get it because my career I've been building for so long. I was trying to do what I'm doing now in 2020, and it did delay 2 years for sure on exposure and events and everything that I was building. I get it.
Yeah.
It crushed mentally, I think too. Interesting. Okay. So you got the training class. And I'm glad that you're also a student. I'm taking a class this weekend. Actually, I get to train with Mason Lane, and I really want to take one of yours, by the way. I keep seeing them. And of course, every day that you have, I am not in the country or in the state or anywhere near you.
Fair enough.
But I want to talk about like the value of training, right?
Sure.
So you would we don't want to restrict our American rights, right? And like, oh, okay, everybody should just go through training.
Yeah.
But you would hope every American is smart enough to know, hey, I should probably take a class.
100%.
So how are you, I do want to know this actually, how are you educating people just in general why they should take a class? And how are you bringing those students in to do that? Or are you? It's a struggle.
No, yeah, it's the job of any instructor, right? Selfishly, but also, like you said, in general, I'm completely on board with what you're saying. I'm not a big fan of any mandatory requirements that are restrictions on our rights, but it should definitely be a self-enforced requirement. I think that you have a certain level of competency at the very least, before you're roaming the streets with deadly weapons and so forth. Mm-hmm. And like anything else, technically, could instead of going through high school, could you have gone on the internet and taught yourself algebra? Like, yeah, theoretically, yes, right. But obviously, when you get some professional instruction, it's going to shorten that learning curve significantly. You're not going to have to wade through, all the different, varying opinions that may have more or less value depending on who you run into first. And you just have the huge value of having, a third party opinion, right? So, I like to think, as someone who's been an instructor for maybe 6 years now, Grandmaster in the sport, that I have, a pretty solid understanding of like how to shoot, right? But I am still taking my either match videos, like I'm a member, for example, of PSEG, which is Ben Steger's, training system, right? So I'm still taking my either match videos or, my training videos, and I'm submitting it to Ben and Juancic every week to look at, right? And it's like they will see the stuff that I see in my students, right? But way easier sometimes than I see it in my own shooting, right? Yep. And so I think that's really the huge value of a good instructor as well. Obviously, can shorten your learning curve, help you learn the stuff you really need to know up front, but also just that diagnostic side of things. Actually looking at what you're doing specifically, how is your gun moving, what are your results downrange, and a good instructor will be able to identify those things and just kind of skip over all the stuff you're maybe doing right already that you don't need to waste time on, or all the stuff you don't need to know to meet your goals, and just give you exactly kind of the things that you need to get where you're trying to be. So I think classes, are hugely beneficial for sure, and then have, a ton of value. I'm definitely still a student myself. I'm taking a class in 2 weeks and then another one in 2 months. So I'm still training and stuff like that, all the time. And I think it's super beneficial for sure.
Yeah. Something you touched on is like you have first point of view, I think, videos, right? With like your own camera system. And then like you have other people video. So you have third person as well. Why? I mean, I know the answer to this, but why are those two views very important? And what are they picking up differently that the other's not?
Huge value in both, right? Especially on the third person stuff. If you have someone shooting your video that knows what they're doing, right? And it drives me so crazy when I see shooting videos, right? And it's like there's the zoomed in on the gun thing, and then like you spin the camera as the gun comes out of the holster thing, and it's like, okay, I'm not seeing anything of any value.
Movement or fear,
yeah, right. So there's certain things you have to have as far as video review goes. There's certain things you have to have third person for, as far as things like footwork and movement and stage planning and positioning and all that kind of stuff. But first person has a lot of value as well, to say, okay, what is my head movement doing? Like, what is my vision doing? How is my gun moving? You can see a lot better, if your vision is getting ahead of the gun to the next target before the gun gets there in first person video. You can see, how much time is happening between when the gun is landing on the target, when the shot breaks, different things like that. You can see really, really well in first person. That is a lot harder to see in third person, and stuff like, when was the target available significantly before I shot it? You can't see in third person when I saw the target, but you can see that in first person. So huge value in both for sure, depending on, what you're really focusing on and kind of what level you're at and what you're trying to analyze.
So what turds in the sport need to take a video, how to video a shooter lesson? Because like 90% of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Get you a phone with a super wide angle lens and always put it on wide angle before you hand it to somebody. That's like the number one thing that will hopefully help get the feet in the shot. and all that, because otherwise they have to get right up on you. But Kenzie takes great video. She's she's the squad photographer. I learned very quickly, right? The first time she was at Georgia State.
I want to talk about that. What did you what did you first think when you met me at Georgia State? Like, overwhelming. What the heck?
Had no idea what to expect, right? That was one of those like super last minute impulse signups for a major. And typically, yeah, we've talked about this. Typically, you know, my deal when I sign up for matches is
shoot with better people, not with us. Yeah.
I'm looking for the best people in the match to shoot. Right? I'm looking for like, okay, what squad has the most GMs on it, right? And specifically like carry optics GMs. Like if I have my pick of the litter, right? And I'm like, man, here's this PCC squad that I'm gonna have to go shoot with. It was the only squad that had open slots. You know, I had no idea what I was getting into with, and yeah, it was a good time. It was a party. It was you know, it had a lot of fun with your squad for sure. It was good. It was a good time.
We're GM resetters, even though we didn't have to, but GM videographer, photographer,
yep,
and entertainment. So
100%. 100%. Yeah, definitely. Probably the most that I've like laughed at a match before, still to this day, I would say for sure.
Oh,
so
that's actually a compliment. You need that every now and then. You need that
for sure. Yeah, no, it's one of those things, right? Like shooting, basically for my whole life has been like, it's been my passion. What I do for fun, right? It's my therapy, but these days it's like, it's way more like work. You know what I mean? It's like, yep. So I fish now. Like that's what I do to like actually relax now. I cannot relax behind a gun anymore. It's
no. Yeah. I've seen you with the catfish and all that. It's like, is this private property, public? Like, what are you doing?
No, over the last couple of days, yeah, no, that's all been just, you know, like public random bodies of water here in North Carolina. And then, you know, we go pull some catfish out of, you know. It's a good time.
I love it. I want to learn how to fly fish, so that's on my bucket list.
I would like to do that as well. That is not something I've gotten into, but it looks like a good time. I need to get my buddy Nick. I told him the other day, I'm like, when are you posting the fly fishing courses on the Velox Training Group website? Because he is always pulling out some monster trout with the fly fishing rig. But
that'd be cool.
He needs to get on that for sure.
Very really cool. So sorry we've digressed. Okay, so training.
Yeah.
After that, you know, what classes are you teaching? And why would someone like what would someone be looking for into taking your class, and like what would they take away from it?
Sure. Yeah. So, you know, as a company, right? So SpecTrain is not just me, right? I have technically, I think, about 9 guys on my cadre right now. Most of which are pretty different from me, right? I'm kind of like the competition performance shooting guy. A lot of current and former law enforcement and military guys on my cadre that have, you know, expertise in different things. You know, I've got a Marine scout sniper that runs my precision shooting stuff. Like that is not my game. Like I do not do that, but he is very good at it, right? And that's what he does. And so you can come to SpecTrain Courses and learn from different guys, you know, and a lot of different stuff. But our kind of main core courses, you know, we do the kind of traditional level 1, level 2 pistol and carbine courses. But we skip through a lot of the tactical range theatrics and we focus on shooting good and being fast and accurate, if you will. And we certainly do that from those courses for folks that are interested in that. From a, you know, a lot of times a defensive mindset, we have applications to those things, but really shooting is shooting. I really don't care what your resume is. If you can't shoot, you're not going to be teaching at one of our courses. We have good shooters. So that's kind of really the focus for us. And then I've already kind of mentioned what generally sets those courses apart from anywhere else in the country I found so far is the kind of instructor to student ratio and the one-on-one time you get with instructors, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I also do some more performance competition style shooting stuff. So right now I'm teaching a lot of the kind of what I call a 2-day level up competition pistol course. That's kind of my, like, if you are like, you know, DCB A class, this is like everything you need to know to make it to GM. Or at least that's my attempt at that, right? So it's kind of it's definitely it's not an intro to competition class. It's not here's what the rules are and here's the divisions are and that kind of stuff. It's all right. We're going to hit the ground running and we're going to talk about, okay, what do you need to do to actually get, you know, good at this thing. And so that's a lot of fun. And we have a good time. It's probably one of my favorite courses to run right now. But yeah, we do a little bit of everything.
That's awesome. Now, are people learning how to use like and manipulate lights, lasers, or deploy slings or anything like that in these courses, or is that something that's more in the defensive realm?
Well, not in the competition course, obviously, right? But so for what we call our core and critical applications courses, obviously, yes, slings are required, for the rifle courses and that kind of stuff. We have done some low light classes in the past. I don't have a great facility to really do that right now, so I'm not really doing a whole lot of low light stuff. But yeah, we do a little bit of everything, and we do a little bit of law enforcement contracting and stuff. If you have a facility you want us to come to and do that kind of training, we absolutely will, for sure.
Yeah. Yep. Are you a 2-point, 1-point kind of guy? Legit questions I have.
You had to pull me in. You had to pull me into the
debate,
the controversy, right? So first of all, just don't run 3 points. I feel like I can say that without stepping on any toes, right? I think the 1 points were obviously super popular. I think early in the war on terror, they seemed really cool, give you a lot of freedom in your manipulation, so on and so forth. And then more and more, we saw everyone moving away from that, just because guys would climb over a fence and come on the other side, and their gun is still on the other side of the fence, and and they're hanging from their gun now, and this kind of thing, right? So obviously the advantage to I think 2-point slings is it actually secures the gun to your body in a much better way. And if that's the goal, it's really cool. Mm-hmm. I think the downside, just in some folks' minds, is you lose a lot of that freedom to actually run the gun, which when running the gun matters, it's hard to think of anything else that matters more. Obviously, there's a couple ways to work around that. You can just swim out of it. I've moved to I used to use a 2-point sling, but I have the 2 points of those sling basically as close together as they can be. Okay. So I connect it to the end plate under the castle nut on the back of the receiver, and basically as close to the receiver on the rail as I can. Gives me a lot of flexibility. I can do, I can actually transition shoulders if you are into that sort of thing without swimming out on my sling in the 2-point. But when I tighten it down, it really gets it super secure, to the body. If I need to put it, behind my back or whatever. It works pretty well. So that's kind of what I've moved to these days. And of course you can slings, whether it's the Magpul or the Haley or whatever, that can hook and unhook and basically go back and forth from a 1-point to a 2-point configuration as well, which are pretty cool if you're still not totally sold on one option or the other. But
okay, I like the answer. Yeah, I've had to learn how to use one of those. Thank you, 3-gun, for that experience. Yep. I remember though, my friend Rob. Yep. He had to jump over a wall at Fort Benning, and he kind of did the thing where he was like, I don't have a gun.
Yeah. It's a thing.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
The setup too, having a deployable rifle in a truck or a car or whatever, mm-hmm. That sling setup, it's not all willy-nilly loosey-goosey too, you know what I mean? You have to learn how to deploy it. And similar to you, I don't know, I shoot in the sling, if that makes sense. So loosen enough that's still there, and then you can just pull it to tighten. So
yeah, I'll give you the pro tip real quick.
Please do.
Step by brief intermission. So for sling management on a actual deployable rifle, hopefully you can still kind of hear me, right? So my friends at the Neomag make this deal. It's called the Sentry Strap. So this is what I used. It's basically a magnetic retention strap for your slings on your rifles. Like when this is kind of would be like my bag gun setup. This is how it's folded up, in my, wherever I may or may not be keeping this rifle at various times. But you see, sling is open. You can actually run this, and the sling's kept out of the way. It's not tangled. It's not going to get, wrapped around your optic or anything like that. I got access to all my controls and so forth. But then if I actually need my sling, all I have to do is grab this strap, yank it open, and I've got it, right? So all this is just a magnetic, keeper strap that wraps around your sling, keeps it out of the way, and then deploys super quick if and when you need it. So that's my go-to for sling management.
Very, very, very cool. Okay. Does your facility that you train at allow you to shoot out of or around cars?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know a place in Tennessee if you ever need to do stupid stuff like that, but good stuff. But
fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, we've got a lot of cool places to do stuff here in this neck of the woods as well. But
this neck of the woods.
Yeah, we have fun with various things like that. Yeah.
undisclosed location.
Yeah.
Like it. Okay, so towards the end of this, I did want to talk about, of course, the Second Amendment stuff. At the time of this, we've got the Uvalde, we've got that, I want to say the release in the videos at least, and then we've seen like the Chicago shooting, all that stuff. So I've had two positive and negative, or I've had two experiences this week, and I posted the positive, and this happened today on the negative. But positive side was people saw my social media and thought it was awesome that it was a positive aspect, and it was training, and it was good stuff about firearms. Negative, someone Googled my name, saw that, and was not willing to work with me or get on a call. I was like, okay, right? So with all the turmoil going on and everything like that, like how can the sides work together, and like why are our Second Amendment rights so important right now to preserve more than ever?
Yeah. Super interesting conversation, right? Whether it's really sad to see it. I think whether it's, all the discussions right now, whether it's the Second Amendment, whether it's social issues, whether it's, the abortion thing lately, like whatever it is, folks, seem to really, really struggle having, open conversations and realizing there's two sides to the various arguments, and actually, being able to talk about things, which is really a shame. But, I think a lot of these things boil down to things that are completely separate from the argument, right? So when I was talking to folks that may be on the other side of the, the Second Amendment issues or whatever it is, arguing over, telling them they don't know, what an AR-15 stands for, or telling them it's a magazine, not a clip, or whatever it is, like none of that has any value to the discussion whatsoever, right? And so what it boils down to, right, is like, if you're the kind of person who, every time you see a problem in society, wants the government to step in and solve that problem for you, you're probably on a different side of this argument than someone who is like, man, I want the government to stay out of my life as much as possible, and I'd rather stand on my own 2 feet and take care of my own and just be left alone, right? And so it's really a difference in worldview, much more than it is anything else. We all, right, obviously are appalled and saddened. Everything's like, like these various events, like you just mentioned, happen. Obviously, we all want those things to stop. We all want to go after those things and find solutions. And I think to suggest that anyone on either side, any side of this argument, like doesn't care about those things is obviously way out of line.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
I think because of a difference in worldview, we had just simply have different approaches to how to solve those problems.
Yeah.
And so that's really what it kind of boils down to, for me. My basic take on it, right, is obviously it's very, very clear that evil exists in this world, and it really does not matter too much to me whether it is someone with an AR-15 in Texas or whether it's someone with a bomb in Israel that is, killing kids in schools, right? The tool is not entirely important to me. What's clear to me is that, if my family and folks that I care about were in danger from any sort of threat like that, the government's not who I really trust to step in and solve that issue, right? We've seen lots of videos going around the internet the last couple of days, right? I think demonstrating that lack of trust has some real firm, foundation there.
Yeah.
And so I would rather be as prepared as I can possibly be to protect not only my life, but my family and those that I care about. And yes, I'm huge fans of our military and law enforcement. Obviously I train with those guys all the time, big supporters of them. And if I can let them step in and take care of business, I have no problems doing so. But when they're, 20 or 30 minutes out and someone's kicking my door in, I'm not going to be, waiting on them. So, yeah.
Is there like conversations or, I don't know, approaches to meeting, I don't want to say anti-gunners, or just people on the other side halfway, or have you had conversations that have actually like converted people to understand even where we're coming from? Like, have you had that experience?
Yeah, for sure. Right. I think it's certainly difficult. I think that, for a lot of folks, the arguments are not even based in any particular like moral, logical standpoint. It's strictly kind of a cultural and experiential thing, right? And so just exposing folks to firearms can be a really great first step, right? Actually getting folks out on the range and getting them to kind of experience it and understand that, like, no, shooting someone in the leg with your pistol may not be like an actual practical, tactic, these kind of things, right? It really shifts folks' mindset on various things like that. So just basic exposure and education, I do think is super important. But then I also think, actually, like I said before, framing our arguments is super important. If we're debating folks and telling them that they don't have a right to an opinion because they thought AR stood for assault rifle when it really stands for armor rifle, like, that is not going to change anyone's perspective on anything. We need to be talking about things like, hey, oh, by the way, the Second Amendment is not about hunting. It's not about self-defense, right? It's not, actually talking about the roots of these issues and kind of getting to the things that actually kind of matter.
Yeah.
I think is where we're going to see headway. And so, I think, folks like, obviously the NRA over the years and so forth have honestly done some damage, I think, to the arguments by trying to say, oh, the AR-15 is a sporting rifle. And it's like, no. Like, that is not the right way. We have to be honest. We have to be upfront, and we have to get to the actual root of the issue and be like, no, yeah, the AR-15 was designed as a military weapon, and that is what it's for. And that's exactly, kind of what this country was literally, founded on. The shot heard around the world was not over tea or taxes. It happened when the government tried to take away explosives and cannons from Americans, right? We don't like that a whole lot. So that's kind of what Second Amendment is actually kind of all about. So
yeah. Okay, this is totally out of left field, probably, but sort of on topic. Did you read or watch The Terminal List?
Yes, both.
Both.
Yeah.
Same. I know we talked about the top line, but the reason I bring that up, again, a cool experience this week in Pennsylvania. I had someone who had voted for Biden, who admitted he regretted that. And we're not going to say, I told you so, right? We're not going to go attacking that. He
Sure.
even came up to me and talked about The Terminal List. And he said it was really surprising that Amazon still published that TV show. And I was shocked, and I'm happy about it, right? Like, I'm forward. First of all, the book is amazing. I've met Jack Carr. We've got so much value in that whole series with weapons handling and guns and knowledge. Oh my gosh, it was amazing, right? So how do you see shows like that and even celebrities, right? I think Chris Pratt took almost a leap of faith on being in that show. He's probably lost a lot of fans because of it, right? But how important was that show to be released to you?
I don't know. I don't know. I think that we have, I think for folks in our community, right, the show, I'm sure, is something entirely different than to a lot of the folks out there who are not really going to be able to identify the difference between The Terminal List and like John Wick, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people watching it, it's going to be the same thing. And so, and that is what it is. But it's super, super nice whenever those shows come along, or you see things like that in the media that actually, take a little bit of care and respect for their subject matter and actually try to, make things semi-realistic and not just kind of completely discard reality.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was super, super cool. I enjoyed, both the books and the show a good bit. And so, yeah, it was really cool. For sure.
Thinking about that, Benghazi, even reading the book, redactions, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that helps almost to, again, the other side of the political argument, to understand government hides a lot of stuff from us. A lot of stuff. And stuff goes down like that. And can you imagine if that was here? I mean, it is totally, terrorism is in the country for sure, but I don't know. I feel like that stuff kind of just sets the example of why we need to keep our firearms.
Well, I think, that, I think folks on every side of the aisle now with just how, with how far the internet's come and just how available information is, I think really, a lot, everyone's starting to understand that. I think if something like The Terminal List had come out 20 years ago, everyone would have been like, oh, that's just like a sci-fi movie, like that would never happen type thing. And we're watching it today going like, yeah, that probably is happening, right? Like, like it's just a completely believable storyline, right?
Yeah.
And so it's scary to think about, but at least we're not blind to it like we probably were at one point. So
yeah, it's sad that people have to almost die for things like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So to wrap this up too, I don't know if you want to leave people with thoughts of why they should consider concealed carry, what their mindset should shift when they do get into firearm ownership, and even being welcoming to other people that might not like them. Any other final thoughts?
That's a big open-ended question. There's so many places you could go with that, right? Well, I think we've, as far as the getting into concealed carry thing, we've kind of hit on my motivation for that already. I am, I think anybody in this day and age understands that evil exists in this world, and there really are, very, very real threats to your health and safety out there in the world, unfortunately. And I think sticking your head in the sand and just saying, well, that will never happen to me, is just not an acceptable solution, for me in my book. And even if it's okay for you personally, is that okay for you, for the folks that, are around you that you care about? And so if it's not, then, really there are steps to try to mitigate risk, and those kind of things are somewhat minimal. Obviously we avoid stupid places at stupid times and stupid people. But, we have to go to school, we have to go to church. We have to do things that involve us, being around, other people, and these things are just, these kind of events can happen pretty much anytime, any place. And so if you want to have a way to defend yourself, concealed carry is a great freedom that we have in this country. And I think we should absolutely be taking, advantage of it if you are willing to invest the time and money to actually be an asset, and to have that level of competency where you're again an asset, not a liability. Then it's absolutely something that's, I think, a valuable pursuit, for sure, as far as being prepared and just being ready to defend yourself and your family, your loved ones, if you needed to do that at some point. So yeah, absolutely.
How do you teach the mindset around that too? I mean, if you think about it, going to play tennis or learning tennis or golf or bowling, right? There's not a huge lift for people like, oh, I know to go to the bowling alley, I'm going to rent stuff there, right? They think firearms like, oh my God, like I'm intimidated because now I got to learn firearms and ammo, and like, where do I find that? And do I need eyes? Do I need ears? What do I need that I don't know that I need, right? So it's like this overwhelming amount of stuff, but how easy is it to get into it too at the same time?
It is, right? And it's one of those things, like there is a barrier to entry, right? Yes. Like if unfortunately
fishing is too, but
like everything else, right? The thing with fishing, it's like you can buy a rod and a lure, and you can go fishing. You may not catch anything, right? But you can go do stuff. It's like with if you're looking into getting into concealed carry, right? What you're probably going to have to do is you're going to have to buy, gun and magazines and a holster, and like you said, personal, the PPE, the eyes and the ears, and you're going to have to go take a concealed carry class, right, to get certified. Then you're going to have to take a class that actually teaches you how to shoot, and to do that, you're going to have to buy 1,000 rounds of ammo, and you're looking at a fairly significant investment up front of time, as well as the finances to get into that. It doesn't have to be as crazy as a lot of people make it out to be, but it's still fairly significant. I mean, you're looking at probably a good $1,000 process just to get started, right? The good news is, if you find out, you find good training, we take it as an example. I think the cool thing to show folks is, and we try to do this through our media and stuff in our classes as an example. I mean, we take people, our goal for kind of our core pistol or core rifle classes, right? We call the core drill at the end of our classes. And it essentially is a big run and gun course of fire where you have to, run like 50 yards and you go through these different positions and shoot these targets. And it's pretty intimidating to a lot of folks, but we literally take first time shooters that have never shot a gun before, that maybe will rent a gun from me or another instructor sometimes. And they go through 8 hours of training, and they're crushing that drill by the end of the day. So it doesn't have to be, a 5-year process or whatever before you're confident enough to actually run your gun. If you find some good quality instruction, you put the work in, it can happen pretty quickly. So, I think I don't want to, understate the investment. There is an initial upfront investment, and you have to understand that it's a perishable skill. So it's going to be, essentially a lifelong dedication. You don't have to go be a USPSA GM or whatever, but you need to keep up your skills to where you're safe and competent. And that's going to be something you have to, upkeep on a regular basis for forever. Right. Yeah. So good to understand that up front, but also understand that it's, it shouldn't be intimidating. It's like, yeah, again, you don't have to go through and be like, a black belt level, person in shooting, right? To be able to do the things that you need to do to be an asset. So
yeah. Now I tried to teach this. I don't know if you try as well or just kind of give up on it, but people don't prioritize their safety or their well-being or what have you, right? So what's cool is when I can get them in the class, right? I'm like, hey, like you're going to get this class, you're going to get the certificate, it's going to be good for a year. I hate telling them it's going to be good for a year. I'm like, hey, do this like Monday, do this Tuesday, right? Get this done. I wish I knew, like I used to teach in Florida and I teach in Tennessee. I can't see like who actually follows up after my class and like goes and gets their permit or whatever.
Right.
Like friends tell me that they do. But I know that there are people that take it and they never go apply or they never go get it and they never pursue it any further. Like, or they want to and they keep talking about it. I'm like, bullshit. Like, when are you going to go sign up and do this? I don't understand how to make people, again, you want it more than them, you care more than them, but they should. How do you make people prioritize this?
You can't make people do anything.
I know, but it's so frustrating because they're like, oh, I don't have the money. Okay, stop drinking alcohol for one weekend, right?
Yeah.
Don't go out to eat or don't buy those clothes. Like, it's very simple. Like you said, $1,000 investment on your life versus a coffin. That's probably $5,000, $10,000 for your family. Choose. Not wrong. It's expensive to die. You're giggling again. It's true.
Yeah. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Yeah, no, it's one of those things. Yeah, it's definitely can be frustrating for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even do permit classes.
Yeah. I'm not at your level. I'm never going to teach people because I don't have the knowledge to teach.
It's not even that. It's just like the required. I did teach them in Virginia. The required the way that the state does required training here in North Carolina is absolutely atrocious.
I've seen it.
And they actually mandate 8 hours of classroom time.
Same.
In your
word off a PowerPoint that
in
they
your
created.
That's right, in your 1-day course, right? And so you're literally not allowed to teach people how to shoot because there's not enough time.
Correct.
The way pretty much every like range in my area does it is you shoot the qual before the class, right? Because they don't want they basically have you show up before the indoor range like actually opens, right? And so you shoot the qual real quick and then you go have the class, right? And so they're basically, your two choices for running a class like that are with the people that are gonna show up, right, is either A, fail 80% at least of the people that are going to come through your course, or set a qual that is just like literally a first-time shooter can pass it effortlessly, right? And then you sign off on that person being good to go out in the world with a gun. And it's like, I'm not willing to do either of those things.
Nope.
And so I can't be a part of the system that's in place right now.
Yeah.
And it's really frustrating, but
yeah.
It is what it is. So
for sure. Sorry I took you down there, but
no.
All right. Any final thoughts you want to leave listeners with too?
No, this was great. I appreciate you having me on. It was a good time.
Oh yeah. And I learned a lot. So for people that do want to look up your classes, follow you on social media, what's your social media and your website and stuff?
Yeah, it's just pretty much SpecTrain all the places on the YouTubes and Instagrams and so forth. Website SpecTrain.us. And then I'm slowly rebuilding my personal, more competition style page. Got zucked a little while back, but it's P3 Performance is the new page over there. If you're more in the competition crowd, that's where I post a lot of the stage runs and that kind of stuff. So yeah,
what is P3 for, by the way?
So you were like the first person to ask that. It's so funny. I would expect to get that question more often. Yeah, no. So that was actually my first company name before coming to SpecTrain. Was P3, and at the time it stood for Precision Personal Protection, because I was super cool like that. But yeah, so that was just the name that I had from that account before I took over the SpecTrain account, and I just kind of stuck with that name because people kind of know it.
Yeah.
And,
you don't have to answer this, but I'm gonna make you answer it anyways.
Okay.
So this whole podcast, I know people listening are going to feel the same way. You're very, 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 very well spoken, very highly educated. I'm always impressed from learning from you and all of that. How old are you?
28.
Yeah, it's really cool to. I don't see you that way. I see you like 30s. I think we've talked about this before, but no, I mean like so well spoken, well educated, very, very self aware. It takes a lot for anybody, I think, especially these days in their 20s. I mean, we both are, but like to be able to understand the real world and what's going on. So good on you, and having a business and working and all of the things that you're doing. It's impressive.
No, I appreciate it. And back at you for sure.
Trying to make a difference.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Very
Well,
cool.
Billy, thank you again. Hopefully one day you'll find it fun again and squad with me and my pickle.
Absolutely.
We'll have to get you a jersey.
Oh my word.
Have you seen those, by the way?
I have seen those. Yeah, I have seen those. Yeah.
Okay. It's so good.
I'll use the cop out that I have my own jerseys with my sponsors and so forth on them. But I appreciate the offer for sure.
Love it. Okay.
Otherwise I'd be right there.
No,
Absolutely.
I know.
Yeah, of course.
Love it. Cool. Well, Red O'Clock podcast listeners, stay tuned for the next episode. We're going to keep deep diving into these heavy subjects and also knowledgeable areas to help you learn and grow. So stay tuned for more.
Thanks for listening to the Reticle Up podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Follow along on social media at Reticle Up or 3Gun Kenzie.